welcome to sunny Lisbon. Thank you for joining our panel discussion, and today we are going to talk about scaling Ethereum. My name is Konstantin, and I'm Chief Operation Officer of Neon Labs. And I would start from you guys. Present yourself, what you do in your team, your company, and actually about your company, how your team or solutions scale Ethereum. Who's going to start?
Why is it me? Like, I love it. Everybody just looks at me.
Polygon.
Okay. My name is Manny. I am developer relations engineer. I'm based in Europe. I actually live in Turkey. I do not speak as much Turkish, but yes. But I work at Polygon. So scaling solutions, actually, there's a few different solutions that we have, depending on if it's like for corporate or if it's actually for the general populace in that sense. So the main one that everybody knows is like the sidechain in terms of Polygon, so Matic. The newest one in terms of our testnet is zk-EVM. Really cool, the testnet is actually live, so you guys can deploy to zk-EVM. It's just like a different port, but everything is the same. And then we have things like Edge and Supernets, which are your dedicated chain. So if you were a company and you have a lot of transactions, like your gaming or DeFi, it makes sense to have your own dedicated chain, so you're not using a congested chain in that sense. So you can use something that's a little bit more cost-effective in that sense. But those are different scaling solutions that we have at Polygon specifically. If that. Did I answer that all right? Yes?
Yeah, it means layer 2, right?
Yes, layer 2s, yes.
And you are kind of a leader in scaling of Ethereum.
Yeah, okay, now I feel really on the spot. But yeah, that's it. So we'll now pass the mic over.
Hey everybody, my name is James Ikiguchi. I'm with Neon Labs. I am running strategy and business development for us. For Neon, for those not familiar, this is EVM on Solana. So kind of our idea is that we can scale Ethereum applications and access to different users and liquidity using Solana. And so, our sole product is the Neon EVM. This is not layer 2 in the way that you would typically think of it, but it's a Solana smart contract that is emulating the EVM. So that Ethereum developers who want to build on Solana and access everything that's happening to this ecosystem on its own can do so without changing their code base. It's typically used within a multi-chain roadmap. That's Neon.
Hey, I'm Grant Gerber. I'm the ecosystem growth lead for Fuel Labs. We have a pretty different approach to scalability in that we actually sort of have been moving away from the EVM, and we've developed our own virtual machine called the Fuel VM, as well as our entire own DSL called Sway, and our own tool chain as well. When we're considering scaling, we're considering all of the sort of different constraints around the EVM, and that there is this need to maintain backwards compatibility, which restricts certain upgrades from being implemented that would enable scaling, such as like potentially the ability to enable multi-threading, which is something that we have. So we're really sort of scaling Ethereum by developing a VM that is, I wouldn't say better, but just it's like Intel versus ARM, right? It's just like a different architecture for processors and virtual machines. Yeah.
My name is Anton Paisov. I work at Aurora Labs. I'm leading integration there. And what we do at Aurora is also similar to what Neon does in the sense that Aurora provides an Ethereum-compatible interface on top of NEAR. And NEAR is the modern layer 1 blockchain that is the first one that is truly horizontally scalable with sharding. So our job is more or less in the first place to provide all the power of NEAR to people who built on EVM, who keep building on EVM, and who will continue building on EVM. And yes, so among our focuses are, of course, scalability and various solutions for corporate, for public, etc. Interestingly enough, the other focus that was one of our main focuses from the start is user experience and onboarding users without the hurdles of crypto. So we have a product development direction as well, where we abstract away the transaction costs completely from users, and yeah, that's more or less it.
Okay, let's start from a question for the beginners. Scaling. Ethereum is like 15 transactions per second, from $5 to $7 gas price in average. So why? Why do we need scaling? Many.
I won't bore you with the whole like, hey, it's cheaper, it's faster, etc. I think the reason why we need scaling, at least the argument that I like to pretend makes me sleep at night, is accessibility. Out of all things, I think the main reason that we need scaling is, we might think $5 or $2 is like nothing, right? But like for emerging markets, that's sometimes a whole salary or a day's worth of work in terms of it. So, and I think it's really important that we look at blockchain is not like, hey, just for the West. It's really scaling as a way for us to be able to make blockchain for the masses in terms of wide scale adoption. At least that's how I see it, anyways.
Manny, by the way, and how much cost on Polygon to do a transaction?
It can really depend. I can't name the figures, but I know like it's like less than half a cent or something like that. Really, really significantly cheap.
Nice.
I do have a funny story, actually a win for blockchain in terms of accessibility. I won't bore you guys too much, but I believe it's in the south of India. There was a police station that would get complaints sent to them all the time, and they would find that these complaints would just disappear, or essentially because of corruption. So what they ended up doing is they actually adopted blockchain technology to be able to file the complaints so that they can be written on chain. And they chose Polygon because the transaction costs were cheap. Imagine if you had to file a complaint and every time you had to pay $50 to file a complaint. That would be impossible, right? Or it would just be very frustrating. But I see that as a win, just as blockchain in general, and how important accessibility is to be able to either fight corruption or, for that matter, for just wide-scale adoption in general. So,
interesting. Yeah.
I think Manny said it really well. At this stage of where we are with crypto, if you just look at various metrics in terms of users, TVL, where development activity is going, it's still on Ethereum layer 1, which is expensive and it's slower. But crypto is a very small fraction of what's happening in the rest of kind of the traditional finance ecosystem, as well as the Web 2 ecosystem. And so we've gotten so far by initial leaps in tech, some ideology, some experimentation by curious developers. But eventually we need to have these abstractions, and I think cost and speed is a pretty significant abstraction if you want to onboard people who don't want to understand like what blockchain they're on. They're just using an application, whether it's financial or social or whatever it is. They shouldn't have to think about that stuff. So I think accessibility is definitely the word.
So I think, I was saying this earlier, but we think about scalability in a different way. The EVM is still relatively constraining. So when you're considering like how to scale out these systems so that it's more adoptable for people, you need additional layers and almost like fractalization of these systems broken into like different environments, like a modular execution layer, data availability layers. And when you sort of create these like more separated systems, you're able to go so much further in terms of what each one is individually capable of without necessarily sacrificing any kind of like backwards compatibility or ability to just like access and use these systems. This allows you to maintain like upgradability and all kinds of other cool things as well. And if all of the systems are able to easily plug into each other, you can even do like a shared liquidity layer or shared settlement layer or something. So when you separate all of the systems, like with Fuel, when we separate out execution from data availability or consensus, and we focus exclusively on that environment, we're able to attain like insanely high throughput at an incredibly low cost. This is because we don't necessarily have to worry about all of these other systems that are just maintained by other external parties, like Celestia, for example, for data availability. And this approach is, I think, a relatively new one in how we consider blockchains as a whole. There's like the monolithic systems, which are like Ethereum, Bitcoin, traditional layer ones. And then there's, of course, layer twos, which build on top of them, which is a fantastic solution in of itself. But yeah, we're just like, I don't know, we're adventurous.
Yeah, so I think that the question itself, like why do we need Ethereum scaling solutions, best is asked towards Ethereum. Because if they would have built it scalable from the start, you wouldn't have to do it. On the side note, I think that like from this perspective, for us it's much more like all the scaling, all the security, everything is abstracted away by NEAR. And by building Aurora as a smart contract on NEAR, we kind of utilize all the beauty that we don't have to figure out and build from scratch ourselves, which on its own, and again, like to think about that you can build an EVM compatible solution as a smart contract on another chain, it's on its own is quite cool. And I think it also highlights that usually like all things develop. The version 1, version 2, whatever, like whoever does next, whoever does something specific better, etc. Like it's natural evolution, right? So for us, again, like from Aurora's standpoint, the first goal was, of course, to scale and to help those who build on Ethereum and like Web3 native, let's say, people, right? To help them scale. But now you can see that with a lot of recent events, for instance, a lot of people don't want to lock into a particular ecosystem. That's why EVM as a solution gets another very big boost, because even new people coming into Web3 think about, okay, there are a lot of different, the landscape is wide, but what makes us most secure in terms of like how we build our solution? So people keep choosing EVM. It's like with JavaScript, right? It's not something, not because it's good, people choose it, right? So, yeah, and our goal is here to also, at the same time, again, as I mentioned before, to, at the same time, provide the usability for users to not only build yet another AMM, but also build, I don't know, ticketing systems, whichever. So people don't think about it and abstract away. And the overall accessibility, as everyone mentioned, in terms of transaction cost, it's not only the cost the problem is. The user experience is just very bad when you have to think about all that. So yeah, we are also abstracting that way.
Yeah, this is interesting, and we started to touch and kind of use cases, why, and the developer experience about use cases. What type of the solutions you see will really benefit from the scaling Ethereum? I mean, Ethereum is okay. A lot of solutions, the most popular platform for the developers, a lot of DeFi, and you name it. What is the, I mean, the most popular use cases for the platforms for L2 EVM that need scaling?
I feel like this is like me answering for Ethereum or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Vitalik is always listening. The funny thing is, it's really right now it's business cases, right? You know, like let's face it, like DEXs, you know, gaming I think is still early on. I don't mean to like shit on Web3 gaming, but it's not the greatest. It's not a full adoption yet.
Why?
I don't think that AAA gaming has been fully adopted in terms of gaming, right? And I've had multiple conversations with people who've been in the gaming industry as well. They're not incentivized to do it, right? And for them, it's sort of like, if indie developers really hit it off, then it's sort of like, okay, I guess we should do this, right? So, but in terms of it for like big gaming studios, I don't think the incentive is there. Because imagine like you're saying, hey, I'm going to take less power away from you and less ways for you to make money. What company is like, yeah, sure, let's do that, you know, like. But most business cases for it are, I think, it's from the business side of things in terms of taking advantage of this because they need to make more money. You know what I mean? The spread is for these transactions. I can't always pay $50 on a transaction fee. You know, so I need to make more money. The sustainable business in that sense.
One more question, by the way. 2 months ago in Korea, I was in a panel discussion. Actually, I attended panel discussion of your CEO of Polygon, and
you're gonna put me in trouble now.
Yeah,
just like putting me.
and he said interesting thing. Okay, you know, guys, mass adoption, use cases, enterprise is the what's next for us. And what do you think?
Well, I think that that's the case. Partnerships with Starbucks, Disney, our Reddit win, yay. But I've been in a few different talks as well. Some S&P 500 companies that we've been talking to. There's interest. You know, like they're obviously like, hey, you know, what is this? You know, what's this whole blockchain thing about, right? Most of them come to it saying, hey, we have some interest in it, but we don't know enough in it, right? And interesting conversation I had with some of the BD team from an RPC company I will not name, but they've had a lot of talks with other big companies, and I said, what is the biggest fear that you're kind of like? What's the pushback from some of these big companies? And they're like, the fear of trying something, because if you're part of like corporate America, et cetera, you know, testing something or experimenting with something is not ideal because your job is on the line. You know, you could be fired for that. But I was like, well, what's your rebuttal to that? And he said, the fear of missing out, basically, because like he just basically says, I'm not selling to you guys. Like, this is the technology. It's going to happen. You know, it's whether or not you adopt it now or later. But honestly, you guys, this is the way the technology is going, right? So. So yes, lots more in terms of S&P 500 companies.
Yeah, and how different it is, you know, DeFi and enterprise. It's like two different type of engagements, you know.
Well, yeah, I would think of, unless you're like DeFi is in Binance, so like that would be that's a little bit different, right?
Right.
But as far as like, yeah, when I say like traditional, it's like we're talking, you know, any public or IPO company basically that's wanting to adopt this blockchain technology, right? And I think that they're just getting their feet wet or whatnot when it comes to the technology and trying to get familiar with it.
Okay, so many things to ask, but I will ask later about enterprise.
Let's give the mic to some of our.
Yes. Yeah, we discussed about use cases and scaling. I mean, I am as a developer, I know how to work with Ethereum. Neon, why? Use cases,
why
DeFi.
Yeah, so you know, I think in general, whether it's Neon or it's another scaling solution, you know, you are as a developer, you want what you're putting out there to be used by a lot of different people. You know, in the case for Neon, you know, there's obviously the EVM compatibility, but you know, that doesn't alone make it interesting for a developer. There's many other EVM compatible chains, and you know, there's a lot of value to those as well. You know, the kind of when we think about building EVM for Solana, or really just EVM for any kind of non-EVM chain, there's an additional ecosystem component to it, where it's like, okay, you know, you could deploy your application on an island, and it's not interacting with the rest of the ecosystem. Maybe that works for a game because there's not as many needs for like composability and things like that. But I think one of the awesome byproducts of the way that we're building blockchains right now is composability. And so the application developers that we talk to also want to be able to tap into Solana, which on its own, without EVM compatibility, has been kind of growing at a pretty rapid pace with not just developers, but also users and liquidity, games, NFTs, stuff like that.
And do you have any use case that you see that Ethereum developers will not go to use EVM? Any use case?
I don't see a reason why you would pick and choose one or the other. I think you probably, you know, if you're building something built for like high frequency trading or something like an order book, then yeah, it makes sense to be on as scalable of a blockchain as possible. You know, but I think to kind of Manny's point, I think early on, a lot of the first experiments were with DeFi. So we've got a lot of, I guess, prior art that you can go off of when you're looking to deploy different financial applications on a blockchain. Gaming is a much more emergent use case right now, and it kind of came out of, it really blew up with like Axie Infinity, which, you know, was a unique model. that doesn't mean that like all these other gaming studios are certain of what the model is going to be. And the other thing too is that like if on the AAA side of things, if you're building a badass game, it takes a long time to build, and the process is not like, okay, I just dropped out of college and I went to the Ethereum documentation and I forked this AMM. You have to have a plan. You probably have to have some credentials, then fundraise, then have a team, then do several years of development, and then you can have a AAA game. So that's going to be a while.
Now we know the secret. Okay.
I think gaming in Web3 is definitely something that gets talked about a lot, as evidenced by the fact that we're all talking about it right now. But one core component, like I've been playing video games for an absurdly long time, and it still takes up far too much of my time, and I wish I didn't as much, but it's just
that good.
It's hard to quit. It's hard to quit. It's like cigarettes. There's nothing that gamers hate more than microtransactions. This is something that I've been trying to convince people of, and I think from the accounting perspective, like these large game development studios don't see it that way because they're still making absurd amounts of money on their microtransactions. But from a user experience perspective, when you're gating content that someone would want to earn behind like punitive or like overly aggressive monetization practices, which is something that we're seeing in a major release that happened earlier in October. I won't name names, but it riles up the community in a way that just leads to customer dissatisfaction. And when we're considering how we can ensure that blockchains are adopted in as broad a scope as possible, we want to ensure that these systems are as easy to use, user-friendly, and developer-friendly as possible, and that we're not alienating people based on like how much we're like financializing everything they're doing. So this whole Web3 gaming space, I think there needs to be like a collective step taken back and a realization made that we really should not be trying to push for like any type of fee for any type of transaction that involves real use case. And I think like play to earn is almost separated from that, in that if you are able to earn like some percentage more than it's costing to play, then sure, that works. But then you're essentially requiring someone to dedicate time, and it turns it into a job. And no one really wants a game to be a job unless you're playing like EVE Online, which is fine. But that's just something that that's like a personal like thing for me. But then insofar as just like other forms of adoption, I think one of the real other use cases is remittance and just like general like peer-to-peer transfers and payments, which is I think the original ethos of what Bitcoin was meant to be. And that I think always just stands as like a very strong use case. Like you just have your own funds and it's unobtainable by others and it's completely decentralized. And being able to scale that specifically is something that we'll be able to do with Fuel, because the throughput will just be like bonkers, for lack of a better word. So that's just sort of, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to consider like the scaling of Ethereum and just like why we should want to scale. But yeah.
Okay, particular use cases, right? Like for me personally, the end goal is that everything is a particular use case for blockchain, technology-wise, right? So from kind of, again, slightly getting back to usability, and by usability I mean developer experience is a vast part of it. So like it's end user usability, developer usability, and as James mentioned, specifically what I really think that one of the things that blockchain really shines is the composability, as well as overall like framework of recording things. So getting back to the police reporting system that Manny mentioned, this is like the only truly transparent way where everyone can ensure, like you can build it in different ways. You can, I don't know, there are ways to build it in different ways. But this is a simple usage that also shows that like people need this stuff because humans are humans, and you need like some mechanics that people understand that they can align on. And secondly, for me, like I'm particularly very interested in monitoring what's happening with application of blockchain for governance. So I think that's one of the things where it will shine the most and also get the most pushback in a sense, in many ways. But let's see how it will evolve.
Interesting. I am Ethereum developer. I have my team. DeFi project. What is required? You're in the platform business, guys. What is required for me to be part of your platform? What is the way? What are the tools? How it looks like?
Learn Solidity, step one.
Already?
Actually, sorry, no, learn programming, or if you haven't already, we just formed a team, learn Solidity. I can't say that I can talk too much about like the DeFi aspect of things, although that, you know, I will say though, one thing, and I think there's not enough emphasis on this, and I was at like a security panel recently, which just freaks me out every time I'm at one of those. There was like a panelist from, I think from Securum and a few other, and they were saying, look guys, the hacking today, it's just gonna happen more. This is the new normal, right? So if you're going into DeFi, security audits heavily to something that you should be doing, and then getting onto our platform, it's like, there's not really much difference between us and Ethereum in that sense. It's just like cheaper transactions, right? So if you have some existing contracts that are on Ethereum, we have bridging solutions to be able to easily bridge that between Ethereum and Polygon Matic. So that's an easy way. So you're, hey, like I'm already like, yo, my fees are racking up on Ethereum. You know, there is an easy way to be able to port that over as well.
So how much does it take to implement integration with the Polygon for my dApp?
So like, let's say if you're
in average, yeah.
Like let's say you have an Ethereum app and you want to port it over.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really, really simple. Well, it depends how many contracts you are and how they communicate with each other, obviously. But like, yeah, we have a few bridging on our Plasma and POS system, whatnot, which is easy to, I forget what the name is, there's a URL. You could literally just post in a contract and sometimes it takes up to 3 days, but it will copy, as long as your ABI is public on Etherscan, it will actually port that information directly over and do a map one-to-one.
Nice.
So,
nice, yeah.
So pretty easy, I think. Maybe not as easy as modular though, maybe.
I don't know if necessarily like going from Solidity, like, so Fuel is built, we have our own virtual machine, we have our own DSL, Sway, which is a Rust-like language, and we have our own tool chain. And so for developers who are familiar with Rust, which many are, it's actually quite easy to pick up Sway and develop an understanding and get started writing contracts and deploying things to testnet. The real benefit of that also is that because it's all sort of like one package, like everything is maintained and up to date and in sync with everything else. So you're not running into like dependency issues or navigating like the terror of like ensuring that, you know, your development environment is like everything is like set up properly to build on Ethereum. So that's to like, I don't know, I think it's just like a different way of approaching it. So like, sure, you can't copy and paste Solidity contracts into Sway, but it is, I'd say, not non-trivial, but somewhere in between from being able to rewrite them that way.
Yeah, so I mean, in the case of Neon, it's more or less copy-paste. You know, there's gonna be some situations depending on what you're building. There might be an opcode not yet supported or something like that. It's happened in the past, and you know, it's been, you know, it takes a couple of days or maybe a week for us to add that compatibility. You know, I think, but just in terms of like, okay, you're an Ethereum developer and you want to get involved in this new community, I would maybe also just say like, you know, I think the kind of like decentralized ethos of crypto has changed the way that these, you know, basically shared computing systems, like they can actually support you. So for example, like you have a problem with your, you know, your Apple or your Mac or whatever, you know, you kind of reach out to customer support and that's your interface to the organization. In the case of like Neon or Polygon or Aurora or Fuel, like these are entities with developer relations and business developers, marketers. So what I would say is, these people are a lot more willing to help than you might expect in traditional tech or finance. Like reach out to the teams, get on their Discords, share a little bit about what you're building. If you're having any difficulties debugging stuff, just like reach out. Because what you'll find is that they want to help you. They might even help fund you. That's how these ecosystems grow beyond just like the technical aspects of scalability. It's really about like, how do we share these values with you?
Yeah, for us it's pretty much the same as for everyone else. And like the original goal was that you just add a new endpoint to deploy your contracts to, depending on your configuration. Like you might need to update dependencies, deploy scripts, etc., but it's absolutely the same as on Ethereum. So yeah, pretty much that.
Okay, the same toolkit, but for me, as DeFi team, okay, some type of, I need to manage number of lines of code, okay, to manage number of projects to support each and every platform in some way. How to attract those developers? What type of, you, James, already mentioned something. What do you give us as a developers to come and to be deployed on your platform?
So, depending, like, first of all, do you mean existing?
I mean, any program for developers. I mean, I understand you can share, okay, this is documentation, deploy a smart contract, this is the toolkit, let's go.
We're talking
but what's next? Yeah.
We're talking about existing Ethereum engineers.
Yeah, existing and new also,
and new,
by the way.
new.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I mean, like, I think it's in many ways the process is kind of like bidirectional in the sense that, first of all, like engineers want to build on chain and choose to do it with EVM, right? Like this is a prerequisite for what we're talking about. After that, it's up to us to sell it to them and up to them to pick the functionality that shines on a specific chain, I would say. And yeah, a big part is the support of the community, the support of the ecosystem, like for instance, for us, a big thing that we have been working recently is interoperability between native NIR and native Aurora, which gives benefits to both. It's same ecosystem, right? But it's, to best of my knowledge, the only ecosystem so far where you can interact between DeFi applications, kind of cross-chain, but not really cross-chain, cross-contract. But the details doesn't matter. They are nicely abstracted away from the end user. So I think it goes to things like that. And again, like to solutions. For instance, we talked about an enterprise. In NIR ecosystem, we have Calimero, who are providing, like, this is like I think they're going to production soon, quite soon. But the idea there is to provide private shards for enterprises. So, and when you provide a private NIR shard, you can, like, absolutely in the same way provide private Aurora shard. And it's also like up to us to hook it up into the infrastructure. But again, you kind of like, as a developer, you just shop for the solution that suits your needs. And that's, again, where building for EVM gives you much more choice and much more flexibility down the line. So imagine you build on solution A, then at some point you understood that, okay, I want to try a solution B because I actually think that this and this feature will really benefit my use case. You try it, and for you to try, it's not really that hard. So, and it also, like, the very important part here is that it keeps the healthy competition, because for people to migrate across EVM ecosystem is also not that hard. So I think it's very important, especially for the early days, kind of, we can call the Web3 still early days. So I think it's very important to have that.
Thank you.
So yeah, one of our main focuses at Fuel, and in terms of adopting developers and getting more people to experiment with the modular stack and just like generally like modular ideology, is to provide just an incredibly good developer experience. And I mentioned this earlier, but having every everything's sort of within one little environment, like our own toolchain, fork, our own language, our own VM, and also just like an incredibly active support community in our Discord and soon to be launched forum as well. It just like, it fosters this community of people who are really looking to innovate and try something new and almost like band together around something that they find to be interesting and that it's like just a very different way of doing things. And that I think creates and fosters like a very strong community. And when you have a strong community, like that's externally seen and then more people join the community. And just so by putting an emphasis on devs and really like truly caring about them on like a one-to-one level, I think we really, that's one of the areas where we definitely shine.
Can I just ask, because this is the one non-EVM on the panel, right? So many of us are in like kind of the solidity world. Well, I think it's interesting. So like as you guys grow this ecosystem, where are you finding that these developers are coming from? Are they existing blockchain developers that want kind of new tools, maybe because they're upset with like what exists for them already? Or are you more reaching externally to blockchains to get people to, how are you guys approaching this and what does it look like right now?
So it comes from, these devs come from like quite a few different areas. I mean, there are of course people who are just like totally new to blockchain and have never done anything. They may have like worked on some stuff in Rust before and they see like a new language that's Rust-like and they're like, oh, that looks cool. And like they adopt that and pick it up and come in and join the community. There are also like quite a few devs who are, I wouldn't say like upset or frustrated, but just over time, the constraints of the EVM have led them to a place where they're looking for something that like can truly like usher in this like next era of how we can like think about blockchains. There's quite a few benefits to Fuel. I mean, we have like a very different system. Like we're not even an account-based architecture. Like the Fuel VM is UTXO based. And traditionally like UTXOs when used for smart contracts, like it doesn't work that well, but we've determined a way to use like strict access lists, inherited contract IDs and everything to actually create these UTXOs that retain like all the benefits of being able to like run smart contracts while still being essentially creating like a very highly scalable solution. And that's what enables multi-threading, which enables like much more efficiency even at the compute level. And that just like is recognized when people are building applications and they realize like all of these benefits like may never come to the EVM because there are certain upgrades that you just can't implement because it would just destroy backwards compatibility and like wreck a bunch of contracts, which is probably not good, but I don't know, it remains to be seen. But yeah, I mean, it's just developers who are looking for like a good experience and we show them a good time,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is this order?
Oh, I'm skipping back.
We tried to also show them a good time as well, yes. Maybe you can repeat the question one more time so I'm trying to like remember exactly.
Let me ask another question.
Oh, okay. That's great. Everybody gets the same question except for me.
Anton mentioned in the beginning, if Ethereum was created in the right way.
Was it created in the right way?
If in the beginning it was created in the right way.
So if I was Vitalik.
Yes.
Scalable way, scalable, I mean.
Yeah.
And actually Vitalik mentioned, okay, scalability and layer 2 and EVMs are necessary, right? From other hand, each platform face the scalability trilemma: security, decentralization, scalability. How you deal? I mean, it's make the solution to be much more complex, modular, a lot of components, and it's a lot of entry points for everything, especially security. How you deal with it in Polygon trilemma?
Yeah. We deal with it actually with a few different solutions, right? Again, it really depends on if we're thinking like general populace, our solution is ZK EVM, right? Like it's type 2. If you read Vitalik's blog on ZK EVMs rather, so it's really like I think it's ZKM equivalent is the word. So again, like you have all the advantages of the security from your L1s, and it's you can have these cryptographic proofs to be able to prove that the transactions go. You don't have to deal with optimistic rollups. Like the security is there, like, and there's no like holding of funds and all that jazz. When it comes to like enterprise solutions, funny enough, we do have like some solutions that are kind of abstracted, like for data layers as well. It's kind of similar to the modular aspect, but we offer them as like individual services at Polygon. I haven't dived too much or played around with it myself, but I do know like, hey, we have things that are specifically if there's another chain or a new blockchain that's kind of coming up and they need a specific type of service or whatnot from that, we offer that as an individual, silo type of service that they can take advantage of, right? But yeah, we just handle it by abstracting different pieces and then obviously our main product, which is, ZKVM in terms of trying to handle scalability and security. Hopefully that answers your question. Like I feel like I'm lost again.
General question, general answer. But James, decentralization. How about Neon? How you are going to decentralize platform?
Yeah, so as previously mentioned, Neon is not a separate blockchain. It's a Solana smart contract primarily, and what that means is that consensus and security and things like this are largely derived from Solana, which has somewhere over 3,000. I believe 2,000 validators and Nakamoto coefficient of somewhere over 30 at this point. The attack vectors for Neon would be the on-chain program, so the Neon EVM itself, which we have audited 4 times at this point. That's definitely no representation of what might happen on mainnet. Then there's also kind of like the penetration testing for the proxy, which is, for those unfamiliar, the proxy in Neon is sort of taking in Ethereum-like transactions, wrapping them into Solana format transactions so that they can be executed by Solana validators. So making sure that it's non-custodial, but at the same time, making sure that it can't be exploited. And, you basically audit like crazy. You put in controls perhaps for us at the governance level so that an attacker trying to access the treasury is actually not able to withdraw certain amounts. There's basically a kill switch, and then of course bug bounty and other community-led initiatives. But security in crypto is not easy, and it's also very expensive.
All right, so so in terms of decentralization, one of the things that I think is really cool about Fuel is that because we have this UTXO model and these strict access lists and all of these things that enable multi-threading, the actual compute resource requirements for running anything that would verify the transactions on the network is very low. The hardware requirements just simply aren't that high because you can make more use of your processor. The EVM is constrained to a single thread, and that's not necessarily that great. So you have to basically process everything sequentially. When you enable multi-threading and you can do more transactions and just process everything sort of non-sequentially, there's a lot of advantages there. In terms of the actual security, part of what we put an emphasis on with Sway and Fork is just insanely good error reporting. So because again, we have this whole suite that we've put together for smart contract development, it's actually very, I won't say easy, but it's easier to verify the integrity of your smart contracts and to ensure that what you're doing is, I feel there's just generally confidence there that you wouldn't necessarily have in Solidity. And then on the scalability side, I think, you can certainly run more things to verify or more pieces of hardware to verify transactions, and you can just do a lot more that way.
We're again in the same boat. And it's like for Near, there's like three assets: security, scalability, and simplicity. So again, the overall, you can think about Aurora as an Ethereum-compatible interface to Near. So especially in terms of scalability and security, it's all handled by them. Beautifully done before, always improving, developing further, etc. There is a lot of material about how that's achieved. And again, one of the biggest focuses was sharding. That is, will be completely rolled out, I think, by the end of next year. And now it's our job to also expose kind of sharding through Aurora and solve that challenge that we have ongoing. But yeah, the security aspect for us now boils down to bridging and to on-chain programs. Same as for you guys. So.
Okay, and the last question, and we will give the opportunity to ask questions from the audience. What is the future of your projects in 3 years, okay? But I will complicate the question. Ethereum works on sharding and rollup also. So how you see future of your projects based on the progress of the ecosystem? Anton?
3 to 5 years and Ethereum sharding doesn't sound too scary. Yeah, but again, I think that one of the biggest directions these days, and we can see it from all aspects, from what everyone mentioned, is also targeting the mass adoption, really. Like, not just talking about it, but actually achieving that. So I think the future is there, and I think that there's a lot of, a big part of the future, hopefully, is also in governance all over the world, adopting it on all sorts of levels. To ensure transparency, to ensure that everyone's heard, and to ensure that everyone's also educated. So it's a very, I feel like it's, like the beauty peasant contest type of answer, but I think it's at the same time sums it up nicely.
Thank you, Anton.
Okay, 3 to 5 years. I mean, I think there will be a shift in just like general ideology away from monolithic structures to modular structures. There will be more systems that function as just like what Fuel is doing, like a modular execution layer, which allows just for easier access to these systems for developers and then easier usability for users. There's just going to be some form of migration to these systems. Like when you can take all of these like various benefits and sort of combine them and then abstract away difficulties that like a monolithic structure would have down to another component, it just ends with a better experience where there isn't like this fear or just like artificial constraints around what someone is able to do or accomplish. I think we'll see kind of an explosion of this modular narrative over the next few years. But yeah, the future it's very hard to predict. Wish I could.
Honest, yeah. James.
Yeah, so in 3 to 5 years, Neon will be on mainnet.
Now I know.
Following that, I think, I actually don't think that Ethereum's scaling roadmap is a major impediment to, even some of these other layer 1 blockchains. I think at this point, people have, developers specifically and users have shown that they, want to, try different, development and execution models. And, beyond just the technology itself, some of these layer 1s have kind of their brands in a way. So, they've definitely shown that they can grow distinct user bases from Ethereum, even as Ethereum grows itself. I mean, it's kind of just like a positive sum game, I think. The larger Ethereum gets, the larger the entire ecosystem is going to get. That said, Neon is focused on basically servicing that community of developers. And like we said, I mean, we do think that the future is going to be multi-chain, and if you're going to be multi-chain, then you either need to have some sort of uniformity in terms of, development, or the bridges need to really continue to improve in a way that there's, I think they probably handle those abstractions of going between different layer 2s or layer 1s or, application-specific chains like that. So that's what we're building towards.
Short answer, I have no clue, to be honest. I think, I've been in tech for probably 14 years, and I'm sure if you remember, PHP was the thing, and then out of left field, people start bashing JavaScript. But as far as it goes, technology just comes out of left field sometimes, you know what I mean? And I think even, especially in Web3, it moves so fast, right? For us to even come up with predictions, I think we're just it's really hard to say, right? I mean, who would have predicted that Solana came out of left field either, right? But I think that every one of these technologies have we're getting into these language wars almost, or these ecosystem wars, and honestly, it's just a use case for everything that needs to exist, right? It's what you prefer, right? I like mint ice cream. You might like strawberry ice cream, right? So, yeah. But I think that I think what we do though is I can't speak for your guys' companies as well, but we have really smart people that work at our company. No, I'm joking.
Punch.
Yeah, but smarter than me, for sure. Very, very smarter than me, that just have made very smart decisions. I think it's a combination of people you need the right people that can foretell what kind of technology is coming up, and maybe it's modular systems. When you started up in development, as soon as I discovered Docker, I was like, oh my God, a Docker should be on everything, right? So I think that you just need smart people that just know and see the pain points of developers and see where that takes it, and know when to bring it to market. Because if you guys remember, Node, it took almost, I think, 10 years to finally be evangelized for things to actually be mainstream. So things take a long time, and you need to know what's coming up and where people are, when people are ready for that mainstream adoption. So I wouldn't know, but it's just having the right people at the forefront of the company, being able to kind of predict where the market is going, right? So yeah. Wait, I just want to say you guys have really smart people working at your companies. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yes, applause for the smart people at their companies. Yes.
Any questions?
Yo, my name is G, so I just a little bit spicy here. So spicy questions for you, because on the bull market it was you spread. It's mostly about the Polygon and Aurora, but it's common for layer 2 blockchains. So you spread millions of dollars on grants or nothing. And right now on the bear market, you almost cut all the grants, and right now it's boredom and nightmare for developers. So you should, so it's better to be understand that self-organized and self-funded teams really have development schedule, technical development schedule. And these people are they're paying from their pocket. And to roll up any DeFi solution or whatever, it's not just enough to deploy a contract. So you need to adapt wallets, you need to adapt backend, frontend, a lot of this stuff. And all of this consuming money and time. But right now, even, I'm sorry guys, it's no offense, but I mean, even Polygon, you're big guys, Aurora, you're big guys, but right now, you're in, when you're trying to have a grant, even on audit or whatever, it's so cut it off. It's almost impossible to have this grant. So actually, DeFi developers, I mean the teams, not solo genius who are developing some stuff like Vitalik or whatever, they really need grant support, marketing support. I mean not just secondary Twitter, something. So I just want to ask how you definitely going to support the real team who going to just trying to change something, not on words. I'm sorry for that. I mean, because, but it was from my soul, from the development team, who's trying to knock all these goddamn doors and nobody responds in there. So, I mean, it's really huge, it's really cool, you've got a lot of but it's nothing for developers at all. I mean, on the bear market. I'm sorry for being emotional about it.
Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'd love
Okay,
I'd
okay.
love to start.
I'm down. I want to. Yeah.
So,
Okay, smart people, please face it.
I can tell you that, for instance, for Aurora, our grants program was more or less born only with bear market. Before it was all handled by Near Foundation. So our grants program only started with bear market. And it was shaping up. So depending on at what point you might have applied for us, it could have been early days or whatever. So if it was a protest, not I would just suggest reapply. And we give grants, I know for sure, and we try to evaluate teams, try to evaluate what really will bring value,
I think one of the questions, if I understand correctly, sometimes, especially for the new teams, grant is not enough. And probably they ask marketing and support, to leverage.
Yeah. So over months, we built this whole package that we try to navigate people more towards, which also includes we have close relations with many VCs. So our grants teams and DeFi analyst teams analyzes projects, helps you to apply for those VCs, makes connections, etc. Because again, for us, we are not investing as Aurora Labs and Aurora DAO. I don't think also invests. But we do work with investors because, of course, we realize. And again, if we go back to the AAA games question, it's impossible to build on grants. It's also not always possible to build on the funding. So
Definitely.
It's all
Starter.
Yeah.
So we have a super active grants program at Fuel. And we're putting a lot of, with everything we do, putting emphasis on the developer experience. We're also putting just a lot of emphasis on the grants program and onboarding new applicants and new people who want to build on Fuel. We take a very personal approach to working with our grantees. Also, my name is Grant and I run the grants program. So, ta-da. But yeah, we put a huge amount of emphasis on ensuring that our grantees are assisted and taken care of at all these different stages of building their projects. Because it isn't just someone who's necessarily going to spin up a smart contract and be deuces, I'm out. These are people who actually see the future, see a decentralized autonomous future and want to build and be a part of that. And for us to not put an emphasis on taking care of them and really interface with them, and instead to say, okay, here's a check, go have fun, that's not really valuing the people who are really building out what we're all using. So on top of that, we actually are spinning up a whole accelerator program where we'll be providing marketing support, auditing support, which everyone knows is one of the most expensive parts of deploying a project on any kind of mainnet. It's almost cost prohibitive for new teams to get into DeFi without doing some kind of major seed round, because it can be $40,000 to $50,000 for a week of work, if not more, for a simple audit that doesn't even necessarily truly verify the integrity of what you're building. So we're subsidizing the cost of that for all of our grantees who want it, essentially, through a bunch of different auditing firms, which I can't name right now because contracts. And on top of that, we're doing the same thing for marketing, and we're doing the same thing with backers and helping people find, if they are looking to do a seed round after receiving their grant, we will put them in touch with people who are interested in them and who want to help them. And not who want to help them just to necessarily print tokens and make money, but people who actually care about the narrative and what we're all doing and what everyone is sort of building for. It's just all about taking care of individuals who want to apply for these programs and who want to build something and may not even have the economic access to get started in the first place. We receive a ton of applications from South America, and all of these developers, again, when they're looking at the cost to bring in front end, back end, marketing support, UI, UX, it's just they're just facing a massive brick wall, and we're just busting down these walls for people to give more access to more people who really want to do something cool.
Do you want it, or do you want me to? No?
Yeah, I maybe just a quick take on this, because I definitely hear you. but I think there's maybe two sides to this, right? I think the bull market was also incredibly, for certain ecosystems, excessive on the grant side of things. And I don't want to name any certain ones, but it definitely fostered a culture of like, okay, we're talented developers, we're going to go out and snipe all of these different kind of grants and hackathon bounties, and they did really, really well. At the same time, and by the way, we see this even with Neon all the time, right? We see teams who are, by every metric, very successful. They could deploy their application very soon. They've got a large following, and they come asking for several $1 million. So that's like the other end of the spectrum. But what I'd say is, and I haven't seen a grant application from you, but what these guys said in terms of ecosystem support is really important. And I haven't really seen, at least from my standpoint, a slowdown, not with Neon and not with, I feel like I've seen a lot of grants from Polygon and other ecosystems too. So I always encourage to keep reaching out, but at the end of the day, it's a capital allocation thing for them too. So depending on the ecosystem you're reaching out to, maybe they're just bad allocators, or there's some disconnect. It's weird to not have any response at all, even if it's a no.
Just on the note of like the whole accelerators thing, right? Not like, I think at least what I've seen in terms of the shift of like different chains do is like some of them are like making the shift to become incubators or accelerators, right? What you also have to understand is like, and forgive my French, but that's a very fucking tough thing to do. Like, can you imagine like a chain is like now going to become like a financial institution that has the support and the backing, has all the resources, and do it in a Web3 way, so it's not like a predatory type of accelerator that's like taking 50% of your startup in that sense, right? I think it's a very hard problem to solve, right? I know personally, I have gotten a lot of requests for grants, you know what I mean? Like, am I able to keep up with it? I sometimes, I don't know about you guys, I am regretful for giving out my Telegram sometimes because I just get so many messages, right? And there's so many messages and so many things that we can do in one day, and we're human at the end of the day, right? It's not that we don't want to, but like, let's go back to Web 2 world, right? The greatest startups and the people that were really, really great was because of persistence, right? So if you are persistent, really believe in your project, right? And it's not like, hey, I created another NFT marketplace, then you really, like if you have an actual use case, then yeah. I think that all of us here also look at the projects and think like, is there an actual use case for this? Like, do we need another DEX? Like, do we really need that? And I think all of us have had that experience to be able to actually validate, or I'm seeing different projects to be able to say like, what makes you special? Like, and this is not a Web3 thing. This is what's your competitive advantage, like what, and I think that a lot of tech startups are, at least in the Web3, are not thinking it from a traditional point of view of like, hey, what is your business model? Who are your customers, right? Like, how much are they paying you? Like, what's your burn rate? Like, what's your customer acquisition? Like, what does that look like? Like, if you can't even answer those questions and you're just like, I have code, like, great. There's like 10 other guys that probably have the same code. I think I've seen 10 OnlyFans Web3 like submissions, as well as like Patreon, and I'm like, great. What makes you special? Like, do you even have a customer base? And marketplaces alone, like, that's a fucking hard thing to do. You have 2 customer bases, right? So I think that really, if you have a business case or whatnot, like, don't just hound people for it. Like, send them a deck. Like, hey man, like this is our product. This is our go-to market strategy. This is how we're gonna make money, right? Like, it's a business. You're trying to raise some money, and for us, it's like, hey, we're gonna put money towards stuff that obviously grow the ecosystem, because you're gonna create jobs, and then that's gonna hire more Web3 developers, and that just spirals in terms of. Sorry, I'm going on this rant, but like that's where I'm getting at. Like, at least from a Web2 perspective too, right?
Yeah, it was like startup pitch. Nice.
Yeah.
Another question. By the way, it was very selling question. You have at least number of teams that would ready to give you a grant. Yeah.
Thanks. So just a subjective questions to all of you. from your personal point of view, what's the biggest weakness / pain point that the project you're working on right now has? Yeah. Was I clear? Sorry.
The biggest pain point.
Yeah, so like you speaking for Polygon, what's your biggest pain point that you have right now, or the biggest business need?
Biggest pain point, I think, is just like, I don't think this is just a Polygon thing. I think it's just adoption, right? And I think I was talking to the guys earlier, right? And I was at Web3 Summit, right? And there's just so much more in terms of education. Like I got like at Web Summit, like we're at a crypto like Web3 or like event right here, right? 50% of the questions I got are like, can you explain blockchain to me, right? And I'm like, I mean, like, okay, great. You know, that lets me know like there's a huge amount of potential in terms of growth still, in terms of adoption, and just says that, hey, there's a big point as a whole, as an ecosystem, we just need to focus more on education because it's, you know, people are using it. I'm sure like you probably have some relative and you're like, you work at you know, Bitcoin, you know? So like, I think that there's just a level of education that we just still need to figure out in terms of a big pain point. So us like on the more technical side is just like any other technology is like adoption from developers to be able to make sure, hey, that they can build cool stuff and give them the support that they need. Whether that's sometimes in grants or sometimes just, I think one thing I want to highlight is like just the time that we put towards helping people. I don't know about you, like I'm sure you guys do it, like, you know, like in Discord servers and et cetera, and in Telegram, you're like, hey, my line of code doesn't work, and we take the time to be able to put into that, and I think just figuring out a scaling solution for that as well. It's not that we don't want to help people, it's just like time management too. I think those are big issues. Sorry, I don't want to monopolize this again.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good points. You know, I think there's maybe like a technical and there's a non-technical. On the technical side with Neon, just given that we're built on Solana, but the EVM, you know, there's some significant differences in trying to equate these two things. And I think the biggest thing we've run into is that, you know, among some other things, you know, on Ethereum, for example, you can set an arbitrarily high gas limit, and you know, you can your transaction can touch a bunch of state, and it'll be expensive, but it'll go. Solana has a more rigid, you know, compute budget is what it's called, which we have to basically, in certain cases, optimize around. And so, you know, that's just one thing. Also, like ERC20 tokens are different from SPL tokens for both like the NFT standards and to Metaplex, and then just like the fungible ones as well, which we're doing a lot of work around, kind of equating those. And then, you know, just on like the non-technical stuff, you know, it's interesting that we're on a scaling solution panel, but I actually don't know if the bottleneck for our industry at the moment is technical scalability. I think it's kind of making an inroads. I think a lot of it's educational, partly regulatory too, that like, okay, like we've got financial plumbing here. We could potentially, you know, tokenize real world assets or stocks or whatever it is, but we haven't actually made that penetration yet. That's just one of very many examples. But you know, scalability is kind of a problem at the moment, but I think the larger is just adoption.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what they're saying, which is that adoption is definitely one of the things that I think just everyone in general is not necessarily stuck on, but having some trouble with. There is the education aspect where people like there's like this very interesting phenomenon where I'd say like some of the more like notable news stories and like pieces of information that are widely circulated have to do with like either DeFi rugs, layer one rugs, like crazy financial stuff happening. And that almost like pushes people away, unfortunately. Well, I mean, yeah. So I think putting more of an emphasis on like ensuring that like there's more, I don't know how to say this properly, but there's just more like gravitas to what we're all doing, and that all of this is sort of taken much more seriously, and that when we take ourselves as an industry more seriously and really put an emphasis on doing things in a way that empower people who are serious about creating positive or creating and enacting positive change, then that like drips down to the external community who isn't necessarily aware of like how blockchain functions or why like individual sovereign currency is like an important thing. So yeah, just like education, it's all like, like not necessarily like technical scalability, but just like psychological scalability.
I would say at 90% everything that was said before, including the gas costs and all that stuff, because again, like on Ethereum, you have like 14 seconds block time. On Near, you have 1 second block time, like it's just much less compute time. On that note, we did, because we launched mainnet very BRS, we did manage to learn a lot of things and optimize over time for that. So right now it's still possible to hit the maximum gas limit, but at the same time, in any type of sane usage, it's very unlikely you will. And in case you will, please tell us, because we love to learn more and of the use cases. We know a lot about that, but still it's potential that we will learn something new and we will optimize. We work hard together with Near to do that. And it's all boils down to, we have a very long technical roadmap, and for us it's just moving with it and adjusting it and finding use case for new things that we build, not in the sense of finding use cases, but actual instances of usages, because we know of the use cases. So I wouldn't say that there are any particular pains or something. It's just moving down the roadmap more or less.
Okay, one more question. Okay, so we discussed Ethereum scalability, and what I'm taking from this panel discussion is contribution and awareness. The layer 2 EVM is about evangelism of Web3 to make this mass adoption somehow to be implemented. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.